Pisces. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for June of 2022. We are the astrologers of Pandora Astrology. I'm Jamie Kale Miller. I'm in Berkeley, California.
And I'm Julia Mijas in Pioneer, California.
Hey Pisces, this month's horoscope brings your focus to home, money, and creativity, which is a pretty broad range of topics. So if you wanted to get those covered in a natal and transit reading in more detail, you can find a link for that in the YouTube description below. Well, what have we got in store for you this month, Pisces? Lots of things, as usual. I want to tell you about a couple of pivots that are going on, which is to say Saturn is changing direction, it's turning retrograde, and Neptune is too. Saturn falls, is in 12 degree Aquarius this month, and falls in your 12th house. Now, wherever Saturn sits, you can pretty much expect 2.5 years of discipline, of like forcing yourself to be more disciplined in that area. But this is the 12th house, which is kind of the opposite of discipline. So, so this is definitely a challenge. And often I've found in my practice that what it leads to is a period when your career kind of goes into a winter time and it rests. And you don't generally see a lot of progress in your career during this time period. So you might want to know when this is going to be over, because when Saturn moves ahead into your first house, you'll find that your career can get moving again. So you can absolutely find that out in a natal and transit reading. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is Neptune, which is sitting right here in your first house. And it's engaged in a 14-year passage along your first house, which is causing some really subtle backgroundy changes in your identity. And basically what's going on is you're trying to get your behavior and your actions into greater alignment with your spiritual value system. And this can lead to a rather lengthy period of confusion and mystery as you try to sort out exactly what that spiritual value system is and how you should behave according to it. Another thing that you can pin down a little bit more closely in time in a natal and transit reading. Well, the last thing I want to say right here is that Jupiter has entered Aries, and you can see it right there in your second house, which means that you have probably entered a money luck year. And we said a lot more about that in your May horoscope last month. And there's also a video, I think it's in the May 2022 news playlist, about Jupiter entering Aries. And so I would suggest you check both of those things out. Hey, Julia, what's the stuff about Mercury, Venus, and Mars for the Pisces of the world right now?
Well, good question, Jamie. There's so much going on this month with you, Pisces. I'll start with Mercury first, because Mercury starts the month retrograde. And Mercury retrograde, it's a common buzzword. What it means is that the planet Mercury is moving backwards in the sky from our perspective on Earth. It's an optical illusion. And the planet Mercury, it has a lot to do with our intelligence, our thinking. It represents communication, travel, even technology like your computer, your phone. Mercury likes to make connections between things. So having Mercury retrograde, you know, it's usually a time when there can be a lot of miscommunications, and that's particularly important for you, Pisces, because it's happening in your third house of communication. So Mercury and the third house have a lot of overlaying meanings with each other. And so at the very first couple of days of the month, Mercury starts off retrograde in the third, but the majority of that cycle really took place last month. So if you want to hear a little bit more about it, we covered it in more depth in last month's video, so you should totally check those out as well. But having it retrograde in the third, there could be miscommunications with your siblings, which are represented by the third house. Miscommunications also with neighbors, which are also represented by the third. And Mercury retrograde in general, sometimes you can run into lots of technological snafus and have, you know, the third house is also a travel house, so there can also be issues with travel too. But by June 3rd, Mercury goes direct in your third, which means that these issues will definitely smooth out a lot better. And then by the 13th, Mercury jumps into your fourth house, and that's the house of family, home, and the past. So from the 13th onward, for the rest of the month, your mind and a lot of your communications in your life might take place around fourth house stuff, which is family and home. So you could be maybe spending a lot of time thinking about your housing situation, thinking about your family, communicating a lot with them or with people you live with as well. Since this house also rules the past, you could also be thinking a lot about past matters in your life. And there are two other planets I want to bring up. First, Venus. She's everyone's favorite because she's the planet of love. And Venus starts the month strong in her sign of Taurus in your third house too. And she's going to be here until the 22nd. So she's spending about 3 weeks this month in your third house. And I mentioned the third earlier. It's a house of siblings, communication, your neighbors. It's even a travel house and a learning house. So with Venus in your third house, it's a great time because the planet of love, harmony, beauty, being in the third house, it's a great time for getting along well with your siblings, feeling very neighborly with your local community, getting some pleasure and joy from your local surroundings. It would be a great month to take a little pleasure trip too, which is also ruled by the third. And it's also a good time, especially if you have to do any writing, learning, or communicating with people. Venus in the third kind of gives you a little bit of luck, a little bit of a boost in using your words in very sort of poetic, diplomatic, and sort of soothing ways to other people. And then by June 22nd, Venus is going to go in your fourth house where she's joining Mercury in there, and she's bringing her luck and pleasure into the home front. So really wonderful transit for getting along with family, doing something to make your home more comfortable and beautiful. And what else could be good for the fourth house? Yeah, if you have a partner, it might be a period where you guys just kind of enjoy more quiet domestic routines than kind of going out and painting the town red. So lovely transit for that. And also, we're going to have a few things to say about Mars. Mars is one of the more challenging planets, but he does have a very good constructive side as well. He's the planet of action and activity. He's the archetype of the warrior. And wherever we have Mars, we can be very, very driven, and a lot of activity and action can take place that month. So Mars is in your second house. It's going to be there all month. This is the house of values. This is the house of your income, your paycheck, your salary, however you make money. And it's also the house of your possessions. So all of your stuff, you know, and everything you have or that you can own except for your house, which would be ruled by the fourth. But, you know, it's the house of stuff, basically the second. So Mars in the second is real driven to either acquire possessions or maybe make more money in some way. Now, and that can be a very good use of this transit, could actually be being driven to try to figure out how to increase your paycheck or how to expand your business. But Mars in the second can also be very impulsive with money matters too, especially if there's something you really want to buy. You know, Mars in the second can just kind of make you buy something really impulsively. So definitely make sure you have some good return policies on things that you're looking to buy this month. And Mars in the second can also sometimes run into some conflict and frustrations, especially over values, since that's another signification of the second. So that could be religious, political, family values, spiritual values. There may be not seeing eye to eye with other people in that regard.
Yep, it's true. Well, I want to talk about a couple of moons. The first one is the full moon in Sagittarius, which is happening in the 10th house, opposite the sun in Gemini here in the 4th, crossing this axis here of home versus career and outer world. And the full moon tends to bring up big emotions just because of its fullness, shall we say. But this falls in Sagittarius, which tends to bring a lot of hope and positivity. And it lands in your 10th house of career. So there's a big emphasis on career themes during this moon. Now, this particular moon has a challenge built right in, which is the square to Neptune, the dreamer and artist and visionary. Neptune can bring also confusion and mystery, as I described in the beginning of this horoscope when I talked about Neptune occupying your first house for more than a decade. So Neptune's addition to this full moon can bring a quality of delusion or illusion. And so during this moon, it's really important to beware of outbursts of feeling or emotion, or emotion especially that's rooted in confusion or mystery. and how that might impact you in your work life. And we've made a video about that moon. You'll find it in the June 2022 news playlist on our YouTube channel, Pandora Astrology. Now, the next thing that happens is that the sun is going to change signs. It starts out the month in Gemini, which is, of course, a very intellectual, cerebral sign. And then it moves into Cancer, which is very warm and loving and nurturing. It's the sign of the mother. And so the seasonal shift happens, and as it does, the sun leaves your 4th house and enters your 5th house, which is a zone of creativity and self-expression. And so as the sun moves there, it's always a good idea to put your high quality attention in whatever house, like the arena of life corresponding to the house that the sun is moving into. And this being the domain of creativity, self-expression, this is also a house of your brand, if you will, your personality. And so when the sun goes there, putting a little attention on these things is a really good thing to do, and then they can thrive. It's also a house of fun and play and pleasure. So this might be a good time to, do more gaming if that's something that you enjoy. And then the second moon of the month, which is a new moon, and you'll see the sun and the moon getting together right here in the 5th house in the sign of Cancer. This moon we're calling Ready to Explode, Seek Sacred Containment. And we call it that because of the involvement of Jupiter, but also Vesta. So Jupiter squares this moon and can make emotions bigger than they have to be. Moons can be emotional. New moons, I think, less so than full moons, but new moons are about new beginnings. And this could bring some new beginnings that begin really with a bang because of the involvement of Jupiter. And so I think it's important to not be too big for your britches during a moon like this with Jupiter involved. And also to remember that Vesta's trine to this moon can help you to sort of contain the situation and channel those feelings in ways that are less overbearing for the people around you. Or if there's somebody around you that's being overbearing and it's not you that's being overbearing, that Vesta can help you to contain that other person. Well, you'll find out more about that moon also on our June playlist, June news playlist, and also on our monthly forecast page on our website, pandoraastrology.com, where you can find the monthly forecast, and you can also find readings or even take a class. And until next time, Pisces, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye-bye.
Bye.